Rocksteady Studios has done a pretty phenomenal job with the Batman Arkham series. Like, what's not to like about them? There's a lot of action, you get to explore Gotham City like never before, and the stories are on the same level as the movies. But what happens when we become what we pretend to be, when illusion becomes the new reality? This is the premise of Batman Arkham VR, as we take the role of the fabled Cape Crusader. We can agree it's intriguing, but will this move into VR give us a totally new perception? The famed Arkham series is known for its deep storylines, but don't expect much out of Arkham VR. It's a small fraction that doesn't necessarily have a defined path. We won't spoil all the tidbits here, mainly because Arkham VR doesn't have a whole lot of substance with definitive endings. It takes us on a quick roller coaster ride, covering stuff we already know, like that moment when Bruce's parents are murdered in front of him, to a murder of a close friend that we won't name right now. It's light and straight to the point, far from the intermingling story arcs we get in the Arkham trilogy games. The Arkham series has always been known for its polished graphics, often appearing gritty to match Gotham's reputation of being a crime-ridden city. You won't be disappointed here with the transition to virtual reality because the same gritty tone is evident throughout the game. It's a smidgen below the quality we get from the last few Arkham games, but it's still quite convincing for VR. Given how the PSVR's display maxes out at 1080p resolution, you don't get nearly the same amount of details, meaning you won't see individual strands of hair on characters, but it's still quite impressive for VR. There are instances when the graphics collide, such as when we put our disembodied hands through or into another character, but they're all expected given the nature of VR. Now, for those who have played the previous Arkham games, they're probably expecting the same frenetic action heading into it, but that's far from the case. Instead, Arkham VR plays more to the detective qualities of the Cape Crusader. First of all, the entire game is seen and played through the first-person perspective of our hero. The best part of the game itself is early on in the experience, when we're at Wayne Manor getting into the suit and subsequently putting on the mask. We also get to wield some of his weapons and gadgets, which are attached to our utility belt. The grappling hook is reserved largely for retrieving far distant objects or teleporting to different sections within a scene. The second one, the environmental scanner, is pretty much there to scan otherwise invisible stuff, like fingerprints left behind by people or hidden objects. And even though we were super anxious about using the batarangs to dispose enemies, the auto-aim pretty much negates any paralleling misses. You would think there would be a lot of fighting and action here, but there's none of that whatsoever. Most of the time, we're using our detective skills. Sure, it's cool that we have full use of these weapons and gadgets, but we're left yearning for more interaction. And that's the same sentiment we have with the entire game as a whole, seeing that we're left with that empty feeling of being deprived of action. Given the PSVR's tracking limitations, it means that we're confined to a very narrow play area. While we can interact with nearby objects in the space, it means that navigation is largely accomplished using the teleportation technique. It works well for this title, seeing that we barely felt nauseous or woozy during the game. Thanks to how we have full interaction of our arms and hands in the game, every meticulous motion is executed pretty well. You'll probably have as much fun as we did fooling around in front of the mirror. Still, the tracking and resulting movement in VR allows us to interact with certain things in close proximity. The VR experience here is quite convincing, but without some hiccups. The PSVR's tracking with the PlayStation camera is still plagued whenever the line of sight is blocked, whether that's due to the controllers or our hands getting in the way of the LEDs, or when we try to look at the area behind us. There are times when our disembodied hands float away and disappear, or we just get a slight jarring motion when the VR world shifts due to the missed tracking. It happens, but thankfully it doesn't seem too often. At the end of the day, it feels more like we're taking on a mystery-solving investigation that has the Cape Crusader acting more like a law-abiding young James Gordon than a broken-down vigilante hell-bent on dishing out the pain. We'd like to end it by saying that this is not a game, especially when we're able to get through the entire thing in about an hour. This is instead an insightful experience that potentially gives us a glimpse of the kind of direction that virtual reality will have on the future of the series. All told, this is a tease of what's possible. The only missing piece here that would have solidified its package is just the action. Then again, the $20 cost makes it worthwhile to step into the shoes of the Batman. So you can say that's the consolation and everything. And there you have it, guys. That is our review of Batman Arkham VR. It's definitely more of a tease than anything else. So if you're used to the Arkham series, don't expect pretty much the same thing, but it's definitely different. So if you guys want to learn more about this, you can check out our website, VR Source, your source for all kinds of reality.